it that you were out here this time of night, you and a baby? And Eliza says she got scared because she thought maybe she had the wrong house. And she says, I was told that you could help me. And he looked at her and he says, I can't help you. And she was backing away. He says, wait a minute. He says, where are you coming from? Why do you have a baby? It was just that strange to see somebody with a baby trying to escape. So Eliza walked in the house and told him her story. And the man said, Eliza, have you not seen the river? He says, even if I wanted to help you, I can't. He says, I can't put a boat in that river. He said, with those ice clumps going down that river as fast, as soon as they hit that boat, it's going to sink us. There's no way you can cross that river. And so Eliza sat there with tears in her eyes thinking, now what am I going to do? He said, well, you're going to sleep here tonight and tomorrow we'll move you. He said, we probably have to move you south or move you southwest. And Eliza said, that's not an option. South is slavery. I have to go north. And the guy looked at her and he said, well, you didn't hear what I said. There's no way you can cross this river because you're stuck. And so they started talking a little bit, and then all of a sudden, in the distance, she heard dogs barking. She didn't make any plans. She didn't cover her scent whatsoever. The dogs had picked up her scent, and they were on her trail, and they were coming after her. She thought she would have a lease that night before they found out she was gone. They found out quicker than that. So Eliza said she grabbed Harry, who was her son, and she started heading out the door. This man, his name was Mr. Tom, he tried to stop her, asking her, where do you think you're going? Eliza said it only took her a couple of seconds to say, across the river. And this man looked at her, he says, Eliza, I'm telling you now, if you try to cross that river with your baby, you're going to drown. And Eliza said, I looked him straight in his eye and said, then my baby is going to be with me. We'll die together. There's no way I'm going to let this man take my baby away. And she left out. Mr. Tom followed her out, broke this fence off, pulled off the fence and gave it to her. He says, your best bet is to try to jump on the ice clumps. And if you fall, this pole will hold you up. Don't let go of this pole. Eliza said she looked at the pole and her first thought was to tell this man, no thank you. But something in her heart told her to take the pole. She got down to the river. The dogs were right on her trail. She could hear them very close. And the first ice clump was already on the bank, so all she had to do was walk. And she said the moon was full, but there was no stars out. But she could see across. She said where she was at, it wasn't that wide, but she still could not walk in that river. But she jumped. She made it. And she said the next ice floe was a little bit a ways, but she just took a run and she jumped. She did not make it. She landed in the water. And she said she landed so hard that Harry just popped out of her arms and said it was sinking before she grabbed him. And then all of a sudden her baby just started screaming to the top of her lungs. His lungs, the dogs was right at the bank, and she looked behind and she was waiting for them to jump in and catch her. The dogs stayed on the banks. They just kept barking. And said the men there kept saying, she's going to drown, she's going to drown, just let her go, she'll drown. She said she climbed out of that water, and if it wasn't for that pole, she would have went under that ice. She got Harry, she started talking to Harry, but Harry was still screaming. And she said she tried to make the next one, but all her clothes was wet, making it heavy because she had on those 3 extra dresses, and they were wool dresses. She said she hit that water hard again, but this time she held on to her baby and climbed out. 3 times she tried to jump. She said the 3rd time when she jumped and she missed that ice clump, she hit land. And said she walked out. But as she was walking out, there was a man waiting on her. And he looked at her. And he just kept shaking his head. He says, I don't believe you. He says, I watched you cross that river with the baby. He said, you must be the craziest woman that I have ever seen. What would make you do something like that? And I said, she just looked at him and started shaking her head. But her first thought was freedom. And the man asked her again, why would you do that? Why would you cross that river with your baby? And she said, I said it, freedom. And she said, that man looked at me with the coldest eyes and he said, you don't have it now. And he grabbed her and told her, get your baby quiet. And so Eliza said she started talking to Harry, calming him down. But her baby was cold, he was shivering, and she just knew that he was going to catch pneumonia and die. And the man started taking her up this hill, and all of a sudden he just stopped and he looked at her. He says, "Lady, you are crazy." He said, "But I guess I'm just as crazy." He said, "Because this is your lucky night." He says, "Up this hill is the home of Reverend John right now." He says, "Anybody that has made it to his house has never ever been caught." He says, "I'll take you that far, but you have to keep quiet, and you have to keep your baby quiet, because I'm not the only slave catcher in those parts, in this parts." And Eliza says she just looked at him and the tears just started rolling. But this man started taking her up the hill. And once she got up at the top of the hill, she saw this little tiny brick house and this fence around it. And the guy looked at her and said, "Just go in the fence and go in the house. Somebody will be there to help you out." And he turned and he walked away. Eliza said she did what he said because her baby was cold. And so when she walked in the house, it wasn't even a minute before two people came down. Their name was Reverend and Mrs. Rankin. Once they got her some dry clothes for her and her baby and got her some tea, they wanted to know her story, and she started telling them. And when she started talking about the man who rescued her, she said, Reverend Rankin got real quiet, and he said, "I want you to describe this man to me." And she started describing him. A big man. He had a red beard, red hair, and he wore this big hat with a feather in it. And she says she watched Reverend Rankin turn white as a sheet. And he says, "I can't believe this. You just described Chance Shaw. Chance Shaw is one of the meanest slave catchers in this parts. As a matter of fact, he's been trying to catch me with a runaway for as long as I can remember. We got to get you out of here. It's got to be a trap." Eliza says she just wanted to cry because not only was she in trouble, but she's gotten this nice man and his wife in trouble too. But he called his two sons down and they started moving her. So she moved 3 places in Ohio, thinking that Chance Shaw would be right on their trail, but they didn't see anyone. And they finally ended up in Newport, Indiana, to the home of Levi Coffin. There, Mr. Coffin heard her story, and this time he told her to cut her hair. She cut her hair all off. He dressed her as a man, and he dressed her baby as a little girl. They were looking for a woman and a boy baby. They were not looking for a man with a little girl baby. And she said that she rode on his wagon. He had a trap door in his wagon where he would put her down at times, her and her baby, when they were in a dangerous territory. But other than that, she would be right on that wagon. He took her all the way to Canada, where she told me her story. Years later, we heard about Levi Coffin trying to do the same thing again. This time he got caught. They put him in jail. And everything this man had, his house, his kids, everything was taken away. It wasn't even a couple of months later before we heard that Mr. Coffin had died in jail. But this is what he said before he died. Somebody asked him, "If you had a chance to do it all over again, would you not do this? Would you change your way?" He said, Mr. Coffin looked at him and said, "If I had to do it all over again, I would do the exact same thing." He said, "Because I believe in my heart that nobody, regardless of who they are, what they look like, should be slaves. No, I wouldn't change a thing." And he died. The last words that came out of his mouth. And I asked Eliza how she felt about it. She said, for everyone that helped her and for all the conductors and the abolitionists out there trying to prove to this world that slavery is wrong, she has to say thank you. And she had to say thank you to Levi Coffin. This is just one of the stories of the Underground Railroad. Eliza Harris' story is written by a woman by the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe. And she wrote it in the book of Uncle Tom's Cabin. If you haven't read that book, read it. She wrote a lot about slavery and the wrongs that came. So, as you go along today and you hear different stories, remember Elijah's story. She was just one of the people who escaped dangerously, but she escaped with a baby in the wintertime on ice floes. Thank you guys for stopping by. God bless.